The day I watched my husband board a train to start his 2-year corporate rotation, I almost admired how easily he lied. We stood on the Amtrak platform in Philadelphia, the late afternoon air thick with diesel and departure announcements. People rushed around us with carry-ons and coffee cups. No one noticed that my marriage was quietly ending beside track 7. Ryan held my hands like a devoted husband about to sacrifice for our future. "Austin will be good for us," he said softly. 2 years. Then we'll buy that house in Chestnut Hill. Start a family. Finally settle. I nodded. I even let my eyes fill with tears. I pressed my face into his chest and clung to him the way a wife is supposed to cling when her husband is leaving for opportunity, for growth for them. He kissed my forehead. Not rushed. Not guilty. Confident. That was the detail that stayed with me. Confident men don't believe they're being watched. "Call me when you get to New York for the transfer," I whispered. "Of course," he said, smiling down at me. "You know I will." The conductor called final boarding. He picked up his leather duffel. The one I bought him last Christmas. He squeezed my hand one last time and walked up the metal steps without looking back. I watched him disappear inside the train. I kept waving long after the windows passed. I waited until the train pulled away. And then I lowered my hand. My tears stopped instantly. Because 3 days earlier, I had already watched him leave once. Only that time, he wasn't leaving alone. 3 days before the train station performance, I saw something I can't unsee. It was raining that afternoon. The kind of thin, steady rain that makes Center City look cinematic. I had left work early, one of my rare spontaneous decisions. I thought I'd surprise Ryan with reservations at his favorite steakhouse. Instead, I surprised myself. I was waiting at a red light near a boutique hotel on Walnut Street when I saw him. Ryan. Not across the street. Not from a distance. Right there under the hotel awning. And he wasn't alone. Tessa Monroe stood in front of him. I knew her name because he had mentioned her before. "Just someone from marketing," he'd said. "She's new. Kind of clueless." She didn't look clueless. She looked comfortable. Too comfortable. She laughed at something he said, and he reached up, so naturally, so casually, and tucked her hair behind her ear. My stomach dropped, but I didn't move. The light turned green. Horns blared behind me. I stayed frozen. Then he did something worse than kissing her. He kissed her forehead. Slow. Familiar. Like it was a ritual. Like it had happened before. She leaned into him, like she belonged there. Like she'd done it 100 times. This wasn't an accidental office flirtation. This wasn't a mistake. This was intimacy. He checked his watch. She said something that made him smile. Then they walked into the hotel together. Not rushed. Not sneaking. Like two people checking into something that was already established. I drove around the block. Parked. Waited. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to see them come back out separately. Maybe to see him looking guilty. An hour passed. Then another. My phone buzzed. Ryan. "Hey, babe," he said casually. "Running late. Emergency meeting with the regional team. Might be home after 9. I stared at the hotel entrance while he spoke. "Oh," I said softly. "Everything okay?"
Yeah.
"Just corporate chaos. You know how it is." I did know how it was. Because I was watching it. At 8:47 p.m., they came out. Her lipstick slightly smudged. His tie loosened. He kissed her forehead again before she stepped into an Uber. Then he adjusted his jacket, straightened his shoulders, and walked toward the parking garage. Toward home. Toward me. That was the moment something inside me changed. Not explosively. Not dramatically. Quietly. I didn't confront him when he walked through the door at 9:32 p.m. I didn't accuse him. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I reheated the dinner I had made. I asked about the meeting. He gave me details. Names. Numbers. Fake frustrations. He lied beautifully. And I listened. Because what he didn't realize was this. The second I saw that forehead kiss, I stopped being his wife. And started being his witness. When Ryan came home from that emergency meeting, he kissed me like nothing had shifted. like I had watched him walk into a hotel with another woman. He wrapped his arms around my waist while I stood at the stove. "I don't know how I'd survive this promotion without you," he murmured into my hair. Promotion. That word again. He had been planting it for weeks. The big opportunity. The 2-year corporate rotation in Austin. The sacrifice. The future payoff. He painted it like a gift to us. Now I understood. It was an exit plan. After the hotel, I didn't confront him. I recalibrated. I started observing patterns. His phone used to sit face up on the counter. Now it lived screen down. He used to shower after the gym. Now he showered the second he came home from late meetings. He started using phrases like long-term positioning and liquidity moves. Financial language. Strategic language. Not marital language. One night, while he slept, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened our joint banking app. Nothing dramatic at first. Small transfers. Round numbers. Investment accounts I didn't recognize. When I asked casually about one labeled RMP Holdings, he smiled. "Oh, that's just a short-term vehicle for tax efficiency. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." I smiled back. Of course. The next morning, I opened my laptop at work and started worrying about it properly. I requested full transaction histories, downloaded statements, saved PDFs into a private cloud folder under a name no one would question, Recipes 2024. I began screenshotting every unusual notification, every Venmo request, every wire confirmation. I started tracking the timing of his late meetings against hotel bookings in Center City. It wasn't hard. Men who believe they are smarter than you rarely change their patterns. Meanwhile, he performed. He brought me flowers, cooked dinner one Sunday, left sweet notes in my purse. He talked about buying a house when he returned from Austin. "We'll finally have stability," he said one night, his head in my lap. "And when I'm back, maybe we start trying. A baby." He looked up at me like he was offering me the world. I stroked his hair. "That sounds perfect." And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. He wasn't just cheating. He was building something. And whatever he was building required my income to remain steady, my trust to remain intact, my questions to remain silent. That's when I stopped reacting emotionally and started thinking structurally. I opened a new personal account at a different bank, just in case. I updated my direct deposit. Only a small percentage at first. Nothing noticeable. I checked our credit report. There was a hard inquiry I didn't recognize. Nashville. Why Nashville? Austin was the rotation. Austin was the plan. Unless Austin wasn't real. At night, Ryan would lay beside me, scrolling through his phone, smiling faintly at messages he thought I didn't see. And I would rest my head on his shoulder. Warm. Steady. Supportive. Because if he wanted this marriage to be a stage, I was going to give him a performance worthy of applause. What he didn't know was this. While he was rehearsing his escape, I was writing the final act. I didn't hire a private investigator because I wanted drama. I hired one because I wanted leverage. If Ryan was building something behind my back, I needed to know how big it was. Cheating was emotional. Financial manipulation was structural. And Ryan thought structurally. I found Jordan Hale through a quiet referral from a colleague whose sister had gone through a brutal divorce. No flashy website. No dramatic promises. Just results. We met in a small office above a law firm in Old City. Jordan was calm, observant, the kind of person who listened more than they spoke. I slid a folder across the desk. Bank statements. Dates. Hotel receipts I'd matched with meetings. Names. Tessa Monroe, I said evenly. And possibly Nashville. But I need facts, not suspicion. Jordan opened the folder and began flipping through the documents. No raised eyebrows. No theatrics. Just assessment. Then Jordan stopped, stared at one of the printouts. Ryan Parker, Jordan repeated quietly. Yes. There was a pause. Not dramatic. Calculated. I've seen this name before. The air shifted. In what context? I asked. Jordan leaned back slightly. About 3 years ago, I assisted on a financial misconduct case. Different client, different state. The husband's pattern involved what we called financial grooming. My fingers tightened around my handbag. Define that. He targeted stable, high-earning partners. Gradually took over investment decisions. Moved funds into controlled vehicles labeled as portfolio growth or tax efficiency. Isolated access to statements. Positioned himself as the financially literate one. Every word landed clean and cold. He wasn't charged, Jordan continued. Nothing illegal on paper. But the pattern was clear. The marriage dissolved right before a large liquidity event. He walked away with leveraged assets. She walked away confused. My pulse stayed steady. Was his name Ryan Parker? Jordan nodded once. He used his real name.
Of course he did.
Men like Ryan don't think they need aliases. So he's done this before, I said. Yes. Not a question. A confirmation. And you're sure? Jordan slid the old case summary across the desk. Different woman.
Different city.
Same language in the financial breakdown. Same types of shell investment accounts. Same incremental transfers. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. This wasn't impulsive cheating. This was methodology. Here's what I'll do, Jordan said. I'll track current movements, lease agreements, property inquiries, any interstate asset transfers, and I'll run background on Tessa Monroe. I nodded, discreetly. Of course. I stood to leave, then paused. If he's done this before, I asked quietly, why wasn't he stopped? Jordan held my gaze. Because the previous wife confronted him emotionally. Too early. He adjusted. She had suspicion, not proof. I understood. Proof wins. Emotion loses. That night, Ryan came home with takeout and a bottle of wine. To celebrate Austin, he smiled. I toasted with him. Listened to him talk about corporate strategy, expansion, future positioning. He sounded so confident, so secure. And as he leaned in to kiss my forehead, the same way he kissed her, I let him. Because now I knew something he didn't. This wasn't just an affair.
It was a pattern.
And I wasn't going to be the second woman who walked away confused. I was going to be the one who stopped the pattern. Jordan called me 4 days after Ryan left on his corporate rotation. I need you to sit down before I tell you this, they said. I was already seated at my kitchen table. The house felt quieter without him. Not emptier, just clearer. I'm listening. There is no corporate housing in Austin under his name, Jordan began. But there is a lease agreement in Nashville. Signed 2 weeks ago. The word landed softly. Nashville. So my instinct had been right. Who's on the lease? I asked. Ryan Parker. And Tessa Monroe. Not a temporary stay. Not a trial arrangement. A 12-month lease in a luxury high-rise overlooking the river. Move-in date. 3 days from now. The same week he was supposed to begin his rotation. I closed my eyes briefly. Where did the deposit come from? There was a pause. From an account labeled RMP Holdings.
Of course it did.
That account, Jordan continued carefully, is funded by structured transfers from your joint checking account. Specifically from your direct paycheck deposits. The room didn't spin.
It sharpened.
How much? Over the past 8 months? Just under 180,000. I let the number sit between us. Not a sudden theft. A slow siphon. Carefully measured. So, I wouldn't notice. And there's more, Jordan said. There's always more. His company isn't sending him to Austin. Silence filled my kitchen. He requested a transfer. It was denied. He's currently under internal review for irregular investment solicitations. I leaned back in my chair. Explain. He's been encouraging colleagues to participate in a private investment club. High returns. Low visibility. Some funds can't be fully accounted for. HR initiated an audit last month. So, Austin wasn't an opportunity. It was an exit strategy. He's leaving before they freeze anything formally, Jordan finished. Nashville gives him a fresh address. Fresh narrative. And Tessa? She resigned 2 weeks ago. Of course she did. They weren't sneaking away. They were relocating. Together. On my income. Jordan sent over copies of the lease. Screenshots of messages recovered through open-source tracing. One in particular made my stomach go still. Tessa, are you sure she won't notice the money? Ryan, she trusts me. She doesn't look at statements. I needed her income stable while I built the portfolio. 2 more months and we're clear. 2 more months. He almost made it. There were photos too. Them touring the Nashville apartment. Laughing in the empty living room. Standing at the window, the skyline reflected behind them. He looked free. Unburdened. As if I were already erased. This isn't just cheating, I said quietly. No, Jordan agreed. This is financial positioning before abandonment. I thanked them and ended the call. Then I sat alone at my table. I thought about the train platform. The tears. The promises. The baby talk. The house in Chestnut Hill. He wasn't planning to come back. He was planning to disappear. But he made one mistake. He underestimated the timing. He thought he had 2 more months of my stability. 2 more months of access. 2 more months before anyone pulled the thread. He forgot something very simple. I pull threads carefully. And once I start, I don't stop. I didn't cry after Jordan's call. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even pace. I opened my laptop. If Ryan thought he had 2 more months of my income, he was about to learn how quickly a foundation can disappear. First, I logged into our joint account. The balance sat there quietly. Solid.
Healthy.
Familiar. It almost felt disrespectful to touch it. Almost. I had already confirmed with Jordan that, legally, I was authorized to transfer marital funds into an account under my sole control, especially with documented evidence of financial diversion. Still, I didn't rush. I downloaded one more full statement. One more transaction history. I screenshotted the lease deposit transfer again. Then I opened my new personal account at a separate bank, the one I had quietly prepared weeks earlier. The cursor blinked. Transfer funds. I moved everything. Every dollar from the joint checking. Every dollar from the joint savings. I left nothing behind. Then I paused.
No.
Not nothing. I reversed one small move. I transferred back $842.17. Enough to look accidental. Enough to look like an overlooked remainder. A visible balance. A breadcrumb. Because this wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about timing. I turned on instant transaction alerts. Every withdrawal. Every login attempt. Every transfer. My phone would notify me within seconds. Then I updated my payroll information completely. All future income redirected. I changed passwords. Enabled 2-factor authentication. Removed his secondary email recovery access. I moved quietly, methodically, like he had. Then I waited. Ryan texted that night from Austin. Made it. Corporate housing is decent. Miss you already. I looked at the Nashville lease photo again. The skyline reflection in the glass. Miss you too, I replied. The next morning, at 9:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Login attempt detected. Philadelphia IP address. Then again. Then a password reset attempt. Denied. 2 minutes later. Balance inquiry.
He saw it.
3 minutes after that. Attempted transfer. Insufficient funds. I pictured it clearly. Him standing in some temporary apartment, maybe still in Philadelphia before driving to Nashville. Maybe already there. Opening his banking app casually. Expecting stability. Seeing numbers that didn't match his plans. At 9:22 a.m., the first call came in. I let it ring. At 9:23 a.m., a second call. At 9:25, a text. Did something happen with the account? I waited 10 minutes. Then replied calmly. I consolidated funds for budgeting purposes. We can discuss later. Busy morning. Busy morning. Understatement. He called again immediately. I declined. Let him sit in the confusion. Because here's what I understood. Men like Ryan don't panic about betrayal. They panic about liquidity. At 10:02 a.m., another alert. He tried to use the joint debit card. Declined. Again. Declined. The small leftover balance sat untouched. A silent insult. A reminder that he hadn't been fully erased. Just cut off. At 10:15 a.m., a longer text came through. Lily, this isn't funny. I need access to funds for housing and relocation expenses. Call me. Relocation. Not corporate rotation. Relocation. Interesting choice of word. I stared at the message and felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Control. For months, he had been siphoning my income to build his new life. Now he was about to discover something very simple. The life he was building was funded by the woman he underestimated. And the woman he underestimated had just closed the account. Ryan called 12 times that day. I answered none of them. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with Ms. Grant. If Jordan was strategy, Ms. Grant was execution. Her office overlooked Market Street. Clean lines. No clutter. A woman who built cases like architecture, measured, reinforced, impossible to collapse. I handed her everything. The lease in Nashville. The RMP Holdings transfers. The messages about needing my income stable. The internal company audit notice Jordan had uncovered. She read without interrupting. When she finished, she folded her hands. You moved the joint funds before he could, she said. Yes. Good. No drama. Just approval. Legally, she continued, given documented evidence of diversion and abandonment planning, your transfer is defensible, especially since funds were originally sourced from your income. I exhaled slowly. He's about to cross state lines permanently, I said. He's planning to disappear into a new address. Ms. Grant nodded once. Then we move now. She outlined it clearly. Immediate filing for separation. Emergency motion to preserve marital assets. Temporary restraining order on liquidation of property or new asset purchases. Notice to financial institutions flagging suspicious interstate transfers. And if he tries to buy property in Nashville? I asked. It gets blocked. If he uses marital funds, it becomes traceable. If he uses outside funds, we subpoena. Efficient. Cold. Professional. Exactly what I needed. There's another factor, Ms. Grant added. If his employer is conducting an internal investigation, timing matters. Once HR freezes accounts or flags irregularities, he may try to shift blame or assets quickly. So we beat him to it. Yes. She slid documents across the desk. Sign here. And here. My signature felt steady. No shaking. No hesitation. Just ink marking the end of illusion. By late afternoon, filings were submitted. Electronic notices sent. Financial institutions alerted. By evening, a preliminary asset preservation order was in motion. Ryan still thought this was a banking misunderstanding. He didn't yet understand it was legal containment. At 7:42 p.m., he finally left a voicemail instead of calling repeatedly.
His voice was strained.
Lily, this is escalating unnecessarily. If this is about stress or insecurity, we can talk. But freezing money without discussion is extreme. Insecurity. Interesting word choice. He still thought this was emotional. He still thought I was reacting. He had no idea I had already filed. At 8:10 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, not from him. From the banking alert system. Attempted wire transfer, blocked due to pending legal review. Amount, $25,000. Destination, Nashville Property Management Group. He was trying to secure something else. Maybe upgrade. Maybe prepay. Maybe panic. Denied. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. I answered this time. He didn't greet me. What did you do? He demanded. His voice wasn't angry. It was tight. Controlled fury. I reorganized finances, I said calmly. You locked me out of our money. Our money. I repeated gently. A pause. He adjusted his tone. Lily, I need liquidity for relocation expenses. Corporate hasn't reimbursed yet.
Corporate.
Still clinging to Austin. I leaned back in my chair. That's strange, I said evenly. Because Nashville property managers usually expect deposits up front. Silence. 3 seconds.
4.
What? He said slowly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply placed the words carefully. The lease you signed 2 weeks ago. Riverfront high-rise. 12 months. Nothing. Not breathing. Not movement. Then, where did you get that? There it was. The crack. You're not in Austin, Ryan. His composure shifted audibly. This is insane. You're spiraling. Am I? I spoke gently. You routed $180,000 of my paycheck deposits into RMP Holdings. You co-signed a lease with Tessa Monroe. And you're under internal audit at work. He inhaled sharply. That sound. That involuntary sound. Confirmation. You've been digging through my accounts? He snapped. No, I corrected. I've been reviewing mine. Another pause. Longer. Then something slipped. You weren't supposed to see any of that until after the transition. The transition. Not rotation. Transition. I let the silence sit. He realized what he'd said. And for the first time since the train station, Ryan Parker sounded unsure. After he said transition, the air between us changed.
He knew I knew.
But he didn't yet know how much. Ryan, I said evenly, there is no corporate housing in Austin. There is, however, a signed lease in Nashville, and a deposit wired from an account funded almost entirely by my salary. His breathing grew heavier. You went through my private investment accounts? He snapped. I went through marital funds. I corrected. There's a difference. This is exactly why I needed space, he shot back. You're paranoid. You're overreacting. You're creating drama where there isn't any. There it was. The pivot. Gaslight first. Deny second. Attack third. Classic sequence. If there isn't any drama, I said calmly, then you won't mind explaining why Tessa resigned the same week you did. Silence. Then he shifted tone again.
Cold this time.
You hired someone, he said. Yes.
A beat.
That's a violation of trust. I almost laughed. Trust. You kissed her outside the Harper Boutique Hotel 3 days before you left, I said quietly. He froze. You're imagining things. Am I? I kept my voice light. Because I remember the artwork in the lobby behind you when you checked in. That oversized silver sculpture shaped like a fractured skyline. It reflects the streetlights at night. Dead silence. He hadn't told me the hotel name. He hadn't told me he'd been there. Only someone who had stood inside that lobby would know the sculpture. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Lower. Angrier. You've been stalking me. No, I said softly. I've been observing. You don't understand how much pressure I've been under, he continued, his words speeding up. The company audit, the expectations, the investment group.
He stopped.
Too late. The investment group? I repeated. It's not illegal, he said quickly. It's just leveraged. Leveraged with whose money, Ryan? Another pause. Then he exploded. I needed stability, he shouted. Do you know how hard it is to build something from nothing? I needed your income consistent while I built the portfolio. That was the plan. Once it matured, you would have been taken care of. Taken care of. As if I were a dependent. As if my salary were incidental. You needed my income stable, I said slowly, while you built a new life with another woman. That's not what this is, he insisted, but the conviction was gone. Then what is it? Silence stretched between us. Finally, he exhaled sharply. I wasn't going to leave you with nothing. I felt something inside me go completely still. Not hurt, not shock, just clarity.
You already did, I said.
He tried to pivot again. This can still be fixed. You're acting impulsively. Moving money, filing things. Yes, I know you filed something. I got an alert from the bank's legal department. Of course he did. Good, I replied. You're escalating this into a legal war, he warned. You think courts are going to side with someone who drains accounts without discussion? I didn't drain accounts, I corrected calmly. I preserved assets. You're making a mistake, he said, voice tightening again. No, I said gently. You did. When you assumed I wouldn't check. He inhaled sharply. Then he tried one last angle. If you push this, he said quietly, everything unravels. The investment club, the transfers, my colleagues. Do you really want that kind of mess tied to your name? There it was. Not apology, not remorse.
Threat. Subtle.
But real. I leaned back in my chair. You built that mess, I said evenly. Not me. He was silent. For the first time since I'd known him, he sounded unsure of his footing. You're overestimating your leverage, he muttered. No, I replied softly. I'm just no longer underestimating it. Another long pause. Then, more quietly, almost involuntarily, he said, you were supposed to stay predictable. The honesty of that statement almost impressed me. Predictable, stable, trusting, financially useful. I let the silence stretch long enough for the weight of it to settle. Then I said the one sentence I'd been holding. I'm not predictable anymore. And I ended the call. The court date came faster than Ryan expected. Men like him believe they can outmaneuver consequences. They confuse confidence with immunity. By the time we stood in that Philadelphia courtroom, his Nashville lease had already become evidence. The blocked transfers, the internal audit notice from his employer, the structured siphoning through our MP holdings, the text where he admitted he needed my income stable. He looked different. Not broken.
Not yet.
But thinner around the edges. Tessa wasn't there. Interesting, considering she had been confident enough to sign a lease. Ms. Grant presented everything methodically. No theatrics. No emotional speeches. Just documents. Bank trails. Timeline charts. Lease agreements. Screenshots. When the judge asked Ryan directly whether he had redirected marital funds into accounts under his sole operational control without disclosure, he tried to soften it. I was managing investments for our mutual future. Did your spouse have access to statements? The judge asked. Ryan hesitated. That hesitation mattered. Not directly, he admitted. And were those funds used to secure property in another state co-signed by someone not your spouse? Silence. Then, quietly, yes. There is something deeply sobering about watching a man who once controlled every financial narrative in your marriage forced into one-word answers. The court ruled largely in my favor. Temporary asset preservation became permanent division. I retained the majority of liquid funds. And I received a structured percentage of any property secured using marital income, including the Nashville leasehold interest and any appreciation tied to it. He wasn't ruined, but he wasn't free, which was enough. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. 3 weeks after the ruling, I opened my email to find something unexpected. A demand notice. Not from Ryan. From an attorney representing members of an investment club. His investment club. Apparently, several colleagues had contributed significant sums based on his portfolio projections. Funds that had been partially commingled. Funds that were now frozen or under review. And because some transfers had passed briefly through accounts linked to our marriage, a few desperate creditors tried to suggest potential spousal liability. Intimidation, essentially. They assumed I would panic. They assumed I would settle quietly to avoid scandal. They assumed wrong. Ms. Grant handled it swiftly. We provided documented proof of separation timeline. Filed affidavits confirming lack of operational involvement. Submitted forensic accounting reports Jordan had prepared. The debt was a mine. And legally it never would be. But it revealed something larger. Ryan hadn't just been building a new life. He'd been building a narrative. A persona. An image of financial genius funded by other people's trust. Mine included. Eventually, the internal corporate investigation became public. His resignation was reclassified. Not a rotation. Not a transition. A termination tied to compliance violations. Tessa's name surfaced briefly in the internal report, then disappeared. I never contacted her. I didn't need to. A woman who co-signs a lease funded by someone else's wife learns her lesson eventually. The calls from unknown numbers stopped after the creditor issue was resolved. The noise quieted. And in that quiet, I did something radical. I rebuilt. Not emotionally at first. Structurally. I launched a small financial consulting practice, focused on risk literacy for women, simple education, account transparency, asset protection. The things I had assumed were handled. Clients came slowly at first, then steadily. Women who had stories. Women who had suspicions. Women who had been told not to worry about it. I didn't teach revenge. I taught awareness. Months later, I ran into Ryan once. By accident. A coffee shop in Rittenhouse Square. He looked surprised to see me. Measured. Guarded. There was no anger in his eyes. Just calculation. "How are you?" he asked. "Stable," I replied. He nodded, as if that word still meant something to him. "I never meant for it to implode," he said quietly. "I know," I answered. He looked confused. "You didn't think it would," I clarified. That was always the difference between us. He believed in control. I learned to believe in verification. A year after the divorce finalized, I started seeing someone new. Not a grand romance. Not sweeping promises. Slow dinners. Honest conversations. Shared bank app transparency without defensiveness. No fantasy. No performance. Just consistency. And I realized something important. The opposite of betrayal is an obsession. It's boundaries. Ryan didn't lose everything. He lost access. Access to my income. Access to my predictability. Access to my silence. He once told me he needed my stability to build his portfolio. What he didn't understand was this. I was never his asset. And I was never part of his portfolio. The day he boarded that train, he thought he was leaving with a plan. What he didn't realize was that I had already closed the account. I didn't destroy him. He built something fragile. And I simply stopped funding it.